Everybody's heard the phrase, patience is a virtue, which is true. But have you ever been in those situations where you feel like no matter how hard you try to be patient, that you just can't handle the weight, the weight of waiting, that is? What's up, everybody? This is Drew Davis, and I'm your host of Learn How to See Better. It's the only podcast out there that'll improve your vision. And today, in episode number 207, I want to take you through a little something tied to human nature, something that we've all faced, the struggle of dealing with the weight of waiting. So I call this one Can't Handle the Wait. And so I want to break down this universal struggle that we all deal with called impatience. And there is a real weight that can come with it, whether it's the kids waiting until the first day of summer, as we all know, as we get into the middle of summer here, getting out of school, or whether it's a business sales professional waiting for a client to make that decision. We all know that there's moments in our lives where we feel like, oh, if I could just get through this waiting, then everything would be all right. So I want to talk about this a little bit, share some of the things that I've learned personally, and give a little bit of a different perspective, because sometimes just the weight of waiting can feel like this massive burden. But as you know, people often need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed. So I want to remind everybody what some of those virtues of patience really are, and how we can use and remind ourselves of the fact that patience is a virtue to help us get through some of these periods where we feel like waiting is a weight that we just can't handle. So let's get ready to dive in, and I'm going to take you through it, and I hope you find this one useful. All right, so here you are listening to this podcast episode, Can't Handle the Wait, and you're feeling like that. Maybe something's going on in your world where you just feel like, getting through this patient part of it all is not feeling so good. So why should I listen in? What can I learn from this time I'm spending getting this information? Well, first of all, you might be wanting to say, okay, how can I relate to this person? What do they have to say? What have they been through? And maybe it's just getting right to the information as to how to handle some of these scenarios. Well, I can tell you first off, I'm happily married with children. So just by saying that phrase, there's instances where there's been waiting involved, right? Waiting to see how it's all going to turn out, whether it's for the first part of it, getting the family started and getting the marital part going, or getting the familial part going. But I'll get into that a little bit. And we've all had different ways that we've had to learn about patience. But I wanted to jump into maybe why people have struggles with patience to begin with. Why are human beings so impatient? And when you think about it, some of it is actually tied to our human nature. We as people are wired to survive. So, you think way back to the caveman era, you maybe had to outrun a lion. You needed to be able to make some quick decisions in rapid time just to be able to survive. But if you think about things in a more present environment, there can be a desire or a driver of impatience just from the atmosphere that we live in and how we all communicate through social media. It's proven that like button, there can be dopamine that's driven from that. So there's that feel good biological factor. So even our environment is conducive to us wanting to know things faster. How fast is your internet now compared to the speed it was a year ago, 5 years ago? The device you're listening to now might be a mobile phone, your cell phone. It's probably got faster internet coming right to it than you did coming to your house a decade ago. So when you look at the overall setup and why we're impatient, is because stuff's just available to us faster. You ever go on Amazon these days and want to order something? If it's going to take more than 2 days, you're looking for a different vendor practically, because you want something instant now because they can deliver it practically now or in an hour or two. So some of it's just our human conditioning almost drives us to be impatient. And then you start to look at some of the actual, psychological factors that are tied into it, just that we get gratification, all the time. If you're hungry, you can run over to the microwave and heat something up in 30 seconds. You really don't have to go out and you don't have to go slay an animal or anything like that from long ago. You can get your appetite handled in just a moment. Walk over to the pantry, open a box or a bag, and you can instantly go and crave that, handle those hunger cravings. So even our entire setup is really designed for us to be less and less patient because things are already available in practically the instant that we want them, which is really powerful. But it starts to breed, more of that environment where if there's something that you can't have right in that instant, you feel like you're missing out. And all of a sudden, you've heard that phrase FOMO, fear of missing out. It's almost that anxiety driven by the idea that you're not going to be part of the inside track, that you're going to miss the event, that you're going to miss out on the special thing that you could be taken advantage of if you participate. So it's like, oh, can't handle the weight of whether or not you're going to be able to, wait for the next time this great thing comes around. So you have to act now. And so there's that psychological component, and it's common. We all deal with it, and it doesn't mean that you're wrapped up in what everyone else is doing. You could be applying for a job and looking to advance your career, but you might be in a highly coveted job position that you're competing for, and you're well skilled to be the accepted applicant. But there's other skilled applicants, and there's only one job opening, and there's 3 other people, and you got to wait a week. And this could be the biggest move of your career. And all of a sudden, as those days go by, is the hands on the clock? Are they moving forward? Have they stopped? Or they actually feel sometimes like they're moving in reverse? So these common scenarios where you don't feel like you've done anything wrong. You're going out applying for a job. You're looking to better yourself. You're looking to, just make advancements in your world. But there's times where you have to essentially endure a waiting period, and that waiting period can feel like forever. And what's forever feel like? Infinity. It's like too much to calculate and too much to handle. Now, when I think back to times where in my world or in my head, I felt like I couldn't handle the weight, I kind of chuckle looking back on it. But in the moment, it was serious stuff. One of the most memorable early on was when I was in college, really trying to, get my act together in school, get ready for my professional career. And, you're going to get that first, paid intern position, and you're waiting to get that answer to see if you're going to be accepted. And you're thinking, okay, at the time, I might not have had a whole bunch of opportunities line up, but the one that I was banking on was going to be a really good one. And it seemed like time moved as though it stood still. It was a glacier, and just kind of waiting to see, okay, am I going to have in my mind at that time a boring, hot, summer at home, or am I going to be able to go out, see the world, do different things, have new experiences, learn a lot, meet new people, and get paid well, and get paid grown-up money in my mind at the time. That was so exciting and so desirable that it was like, oh my gosh, can I tear the pages of the calendar off a little bit quicker? Can we move along here? Let's skip through finals. We don't need to get, go through those formalities. I'm already a candidate. Let's move ahead. But it's funny because, you really have to still go through the motions of kind of completing that task that you set out to do. Right. So if I'd have blown off the rest of my semester and said, I'm just waiting for this offer, to come in or to get accepted, it's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe the acceptance was pending, that I still, pulled a 3.0 grade point average. And then let's say I hadn't done that, and in waiting and being overwhelmed by the weight of waiting, if I didn't keep my eyes on the priorities at hand, which was still to, finish the semester strong and do the things that I was focused on at that time, I could have missed out, because I'd be distracted by something really that's in the future that you may want to happen, but hasn't happened yet. And it's going to happen naturally in its due time. And so, thinking about those simple examples can be one that are testy, and you realize that time's just going to pass anyway. So you get the call, you get the acceptance, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, that, job was 20 years ago. But in the moment, time was never going to pass, and we were just waiting at this standstill. And so thinking about that, or other times in life that I've dealt with, that you just felt like nothing can happen until we reach get past this juncture, and you realize that's really just an illusion. And how common is it, the scenario where, let's move forward in life, kids. Maybe you're entering the stage of parenthood. Um, and you're ready to have your first child. Has anyone experienced the one where no sooner than you find out that you're expecting and you're ready to share it with the world, everyone's asking, hey, boy or girl? And you're like, whoa, we just, the news is brand new. And so sometimes that can overtake some people where it's like, okay, because we've got, technology everywhere, you want to know as soon as it's physically possible, how soon can you get your ultrasound, and then from there you can move on to, how soon can you get the blood test because you want to have even more accuracy. So there's these interesting scenarios where we can almost become irrational, and it's kind of like the joke that says, you know it doesn't, basically doesn't matter how motivated, a woman is. It takes a certain period of time to have a baby. And so the idea that, there's a developmental process in things, that's natural and you can't rush it. And so even though we may be antsy, we may be anxious and say, hey, I just want this to happen faster, chances are you're not just going to go to the 4-year university and be done in half a semester or in one semester, because there's a natural process to things taking their time. And if we can kind of respect the changing of the seasons and the natural element of it, it can really give us an opportunity to have perspective and step back a little bit. Because to be fair, some of these situations we can really put ourselves under undue stress, the weight of waiting for if the one that you want to be with forever, if they're if you think they're going to say yes and you're ready to pop the question, the weight of maybe the custom invitations coming back for the wedding, or whatever the scenario is in your world that means a lot to you and you're looking forward to, but has to kind of run its course from a time standpoint. Sometimes you can drive yourself halfway crazy, and sometimes the stress and anxiety that we create isn't worth it. And so if any of these scenarios that I've pointed out resonate with you, great. If these are ones that don't necessarily line up with your life, that's all right too, because everyone's had something that they've been waiting for and felt like they can't handle. So the super question that we all want to know is, how do you deal with this? How do you cope with it? Because the fact of the matter is, you ought to have some sort of mechanisms when your mind is playing tricks on you and you feel like you just can't handle the weight. Well, here's a couple to think about. Number one is we can step back from the situation. Looking at the scenario from a 50,000 foot view, how much control do you have over the scenario? Is this something where waiting is just the only option that there is? If that's the case, great. It's simply the passing of time, which is pretty constant. It's about the only constant out there is change. Change is constant. The movement of time is a consistent, constant thing. So looking at that as your ally versus your enemy. So reframing and repositioning is one thing. Second would be looking at ways that you can do things creatively, like, hey, I could distract myself right now. I can go and get involved in some sort of physical activity. I can go and give a call to a friend and share some of the things that I'm dealing with. Have them kind of talk you off the ledge a little bit, maybe help you release some steam and see things from a different perspective if you're not doing so on your own. These can be simple ways to help you adjust and distract yourself and buy a little bit of time, just almost like a little biohack, because the idea that this is something you can overcome ought to be resonating in your mind as well, as opposed to the idea of thinking that, I can't deal with this. I can't handle the waiting. And if you don't take time to meditate, this could be an opportunity to look at that for a way to force the issue, to take that time out and actually look at it as, hey, I'm going to embrace time, be present in the moment, and not necessarily put myself in a situation of stress because I'm trying to project myself into a future that I maybe don't have the right level of control over. And so during that time, maybe you're meditating or just taking time out to think about the outcome that you want. And that visualization effort can be something that works to your advantage to help you think about getting clear about the outcome that's desired. so that you can almost look at the waiting as just the time passing before you get closer to that thing that you really want. So really it's a function of playing some mind games with yourself and looking at things from a different perspective, because if you've ever heard this phrase, you might be able to appreciate it. I can be hurt by nothing but my thoughts. So if we find that our thoughts are essentially torturing us, then we have to have the awareness to be willing to step back, push pause, acknowledge that this is taking place, and change it. Recognizing that patience is a virtue because it can help you to grow, to take that time out, to not be so hasty in your actions, because they say haste makes waste. Well, haste can also make some wasteful or undesirable decisions. So the patience can allow you the opportunity to do what? Of all things, oddly enough, if you're listening to this podcast, it can help you learn how to see better. Because that patience, that ability to really evaluate the playing field effectively, like a quarterback reading the defense, they can see what they're up against and how they need to navigate those potentially troublesome waters. So reminding yourself patience is a virtue and it's a growth element. So let's wrap up. Can't handle the weight, or can you? It's really a function of what you decide, So let's do this. Let's recognize that sensation, feeling like you can't handle the weight, it's normal, but it doesn't have to be this way. You can handle it. How do I know? Because I've been there. And I shared those examples, times where I was the one having to sit there and go through the situation where, okay, am I going to be accepted for this, career-changing opportunity, as a college intern, paid college intern, by the way, but a big deal for me at the time. And I've learned from those situations that, the decision was made. I'd had my inputs prior to the waiting. So you've kind of, the ship has set sail, so to speak. You put your best foot out there and you kind of leave the field held high, and then you wait for, everything, all the points to tally up, so to speak. And so I've learned how to become more patient through parenting, where you feel like, okay, if there's a situation where my kid's going through this phase of life where they've got a bad attitude and I can't handle the weight of them going through this phase, guess what? No different than the seasons. They keep changing and they keep passing. Like my late great mentor, Jim Rohn, said, there's never a double winter, never a double night. So, there's not two nights in a row. So it's not 2 seasons in a row. The seasons are always changing. So I've learned how to see better through my own experiences with parenting, on a personal level, my professional career. And I've been able to use the power of time, reframing, simple phrases, positive outlook, positive outcome. Those can help to lift the weight and enjoy the virtue that patience really is. So that's really what I wanted to share with everybody and let you know that you can handle the weight. And so get your patience muscle strong, do your patience push-ups so you can handle the weight, and press that off of your chest, because it shouldn't weigh you down. And let me know your feedback on this one. If you've got some experiences you'd love to share, I'd love to get that input. And so give some expansion on that in another episode. But for those of you that listen in this one, I want to thank you for sticking with me for this episode of Learn How to See Better. This is your host, Drew Davis, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for listening.